everyone, and welcome to this little over an hour session hosted for you by the Milton Keynes Islamic Arts and Culture and the Liverpool Arab Arts Festival. We are inviting you to a wide-ranging and, we hope, diverse, culturally and politically, socially diverse showcase into the art and culture of Yemen, looking not at the headlines that you might be reading about and worrying about, not talking about pain, struggle, strife and struggling, even though that may be a background and something that comes into our conversation today. It's also looking at cultural and creative resistance and renaissance and creativity in tough times. We are aware from the outset that not everyone knows about the region or its history, its plus points or its less plus points. So we are hoping today for a positive chronicling of solutions and a celebration of resistance, culture, and creativity. We're going to say that we have an hour because I've noticed that whenever we warn people, they only have 5 minutes. 5 becomes 7 in their heads. So what I'm going to say to all of our participants today is think as if you have only 3 minutes to talk, and that will get us to about 5 minutes in reality. We have an entire range of arts and cultures, speakers, human rights activists, commentators, academics, creatives from across the board. Without further ado, we would like to thank all our organizers and sponsors for today, all the people working behind the scenes. We are going to finish at 7:15, and that gives everyone really around 5 minutes or so to talk. But we are going to start with Taher Kasim, MBE. Taher worked in primary healthcare, the health service and public health in Yemen, Sweden, and England for more than 35 years. He was a founder and a leader of numerous voluntary organizations, including a founder and chair of Liverpool Arabic Centre, a founder and chair of Liverpool Arab Arts Festival, a co-founder of Liverpool Friends of Yemen for Peace and the Yemen Mobile Health Project. He is also the lead for the Yemen in Conflict project within Liverpool Arab Arts Festival. And we're going to be seeing a film about that very soon. But first, I think we want to hear from the man himself, because it's always good to put a face and a voice to a name. Taher, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bidisha. Okay, I'll try my 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and I'm glad you are joining us in this important event. Thank you for the co-sponsors of this event, Milton Keynes Islamic Art and Culture and the Liverpool Arab Arts Festival. I will talk first about the Yemen in Conflict project in the UK. Then I will provide a snapshot about challenges and hopes for art in Yemen today. Yemen is in its 7th year of war, and as of today, there is no sign that the war will stop anytime soon. In March 1919, a partnership was formed between the University of Liverpool, the University of Leeds, and the Liverpool Arab Arts Festival. Partners agreed to organize and run a project using poetry and spoken words to tell part of the story about the Yemen conflict. The purpose was to increase and enhance both political and public awareness of the situation in Yemen and lead to wider cultural understanding of the diaspora and refugee communities in the UK. Workshops were chosen as a model for the delivery of the project. We produced a series of poetry workshops throughout the UK, working with the Yemeni community. We worked in 4 cities, Liverpool, Cardiff, Sheffield, and Birmingham. We believe that the Yemen in Conflict project has contributed positively through art and poetry to highlight some of the issues caused by the war, which have been catastrophic in consequences on the people of Yemen. The project aims to provide a space for poets and participants to tell their stories about the conflict in the UK and as well as in Yemen. It also aims to create a platform for the artists to perform their art and reach out globally. This project has created opportunities for artists and audience to show their passion and express their emotions about what they have witnessed and experienced throughout their participation in the poetry workshop. We have completed 4 phases and we are planning the 5th one now. In phase 1, we run workshops in the 4 cities I mentioned before. We work with a lead poet in each city who liaised with a selection of participants, finding a venue and run the workshops. In phase 2, we used key poets' reflections after each workshop and created animated films. All these poems and films are available on Liverpool Arab Arts Festival website. We also produced a summary documentary film highlighting the aims of the project and some of the key points raised and discussed. You will see a glimpse of that one later on. In phase 3, we organized a virtual workshop for the poets only. In that workshop, we explored further the interest of the poets, discussed their opinions, and considered what next. The poets strongly supported the idea to continue with the project. They provided a range of suggestions about what kind of activities they would like Liverpool Arab Arts Festival and partners to do. Here is a sample of suggestions. They wanted to have regular workshops, turn outstanding poems into music, have visionary poems, predicting what will happen in Yemen in the future, writing stories about their own poems, producing films and theater, a book including all the poems, a new forum just for poetry in the UK and beyond, and inviting other academics to take part in this project. In phase 4, we organized a Yemeni female-only poet event, 2 from Yemen and 2 from the UK. We wanted to show how storytelling and poetry can heighten understanding of the situation in Yemen. In phase 5, we are planning to organize a series of UK-wide virtual workshops, and we will use the same model as we did before. We asked participants at the end of each workshop to write their reflections about what they have seen and heard. Here are samples of few quotes. This is as they wrote it. Some of the poets were able to highlight the injustice in Yemen. They were able to express their sadness when they read the poems. I felt that one of the poets was going to cry. He was so emotional. I felt so good that many attended the workshop. I wish that more and more of these workshops to continue. In this way, at least, we can reach our voices on behalf of the children's voices to people who need to know about Yemen. It is a very short, immediate poem after one of the workshops. Repetition, very powerful. Listening to all poems just repeatedly makes you question why. The excess of pain hits you hard. Repeated questions why. Incredibly powerful. It forces you to dive into reality and think about the truths your mind resists. Very quickly, I will have a very snapshots about challenges and hopes for arts in Yemen. The challenges. In 1994, when the Islah Party, which is closely associated with Muslim Brotherhood, controlled the Ministry of Education in Yemen, they took arts out of the public school curriculum completely. Then the war came, and made it even more difficult for artists in Yemen to participate and showcase their artwork. The spaces where artists may share their artwork are shrinking. Artists can't make exhibition as there are no spaces for cultural events now. The existing authorities and groups in Yemen know very well the power of art, and therefore they put tremendous pressure on artists to produce art as PR and propaganda for their own fighting. There is hope. Despite the absence of state support for art in Yemen, many individuals, civil society organizations, and groups feel that they are directly contributing to violence prevention and providing alternative spaces and activities for people outside of the link used by warlords to fight in the front lines. But if they have a chance to perform their art in a safe, welcoming space, they will be good examples of peacemakers within their own communities. Some organizations see the creative arts as a potential and positive source of income for young people, providing an alternative to financial support offered by violent groups. The Yemeni House of Music and Arts in the capital Sana'a continues to train young people in musical instruments, which can then be a source of income for the students. The youth-led initiative Art for Change by MIMS in Hadramaut continue to work with young artists who have been involved in their projects. Comra, a filmmaking organization, assists their trainees in similar ways, providing them with work and facilitating them to obtain some income, even if it is intermittent. In this way, young people find a source of income from small grants projects and equip themselves with the skills for the future. Most of these grants are provided by international donors. Despite the scarce of funding and the authorities or groups discouraging art in Yemen, individual artists and groups continue to use arts to communicate their messages. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed for that amazing and incredibly inspiring introduction to this issue, because I think that encapsulates all of what we've been talking about and all of what we will talk about over the next 55 minutes. Now I can see Mushab has already begun sharing his screen. So we now have a really powerful film, Yemen in Conflict. I'd like to introduce everyone to that. Thank you.
We hosted events in 4 cities. Each of these cities had a Yemeni poet leading the workshops and working directly with local community members.
The lead poets worked very closely with other poets. A lot of communication took place in preparation and then during the workshops.
The first workshop to be hosted was in Liverpool. The lead poet at this event was Amina Atiq.
So I started using photo poetic as a way of my creative development. So I look at an image and I start asking myself, what is the story here? What are the senses around it? And I start writing the story of the image.
Our next event was at Cardiff, held in the Channel View Centre, and the lead poet here was Ahmed Al-Khulaibi, assisted by Khalid Al-Shamiri.
يسقى بماء المطر يا وطن أنا متعب لا أستطيع الكلام أركض في جوف هذا المدى دون توقف ترنح ظلي وأخشى السكون فرغتنا الهموم وما عاد في الحلم.
فرصة سعيدة للجميع هنا. طبعا قصيدة حنين وصار الأمانة الجميلتين قصيدة الأخ أحمد والأخ خالد. عموما اللي يقولوا إنه
Our event in Birmingham was held in the prestigious Midlands Art Centre, and the turnout for this event was great.
The key poet from this workshop was Dr. Abdul Hakim Al-Qadi.
ألا أيها الوطن المستباح، أما آن للجرح أن يندمل وللقلب أن يستراح، أما آن للأرض أن تلثم الحب.
The Burngrave Vestry Hall was the home for our Sheffield workshop. We received a very warm welcome here, with the participating group voluntarily cooking for the event and providing delicious food.
Dr. Hamdan Dammak was the key poet and worked closely with Mahmoud Al-Hazzani. There were excellent contributions by 5 other local poets, including, amongst others, Ali Al-Sawraqi and Salim Sha'a.
يمانيون في المنفى ومنفيون في اليمن جنوبيون في صنعاء شماليون في عدن. كل من في الحي مات عدا طفل اختفى. صرخ النور فاستمق الصمت البكاء عن وطن نازح.
The basis of the project, Yemen in Conflict Poetry, was to create a Yemeni diaspora and others in the UK using poetry as a medium to describe the scale of the war in Yemen. Without creative thinking, the project would not have happened. The project has created a window of opportunity to get participants to listen to poetry and express themselves.
Words used in these creative workshops showed how Yemen has been destroyed year after year for the last 5.5 years, and the Yemeni diaspora watching helplessly. The emotions that we have witnessed during these workshops leave us in no doubt to contact them again and show them that we care about what they have to say.
Thank you very much indeed. We had to cut that video short, but anyone who wants to see the rest of it, please go and search it out. That was Yemen in Conflict, related to the words of wisdom and inspiration given to us just before then by Tahir Kasim, MBE. We're going to now move on because we are very delighted to have Jafar Ladak with us as well. Sheikh Jafar was the director of the DRC group, supplying locum doctors to the NHS in the UK until 2011. Beginning his Islamic studies in 2005, his master's dissertation is on an Islamic theory of global citizenship. He has authored 4 books, including The Hidden Treasure and also A Pure Land, Islamic History of Yemen, which came out in 2018. Now, we are very pushed for time, so I will stop talking, but Sheikh Jafar, over to you. I'm going to turn my video off, but I am listening.
Begin in the name of God, the most kind, the most merciful. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you all. Very grateful to have been invited to such a phenomenal program, and we pray for its success and for the success and safety of all of our Yemeni brethren, wherever they may be around the world. The project that I had been working on to support the Yemeni people was a book that collected the Quranic verses and the prophetic traditions regarding the history and culture of Yemen. In the Quran, Yemen is actually referred to as Baldatun Tayyibah, a pure land, which is mentioned in chapter number 34, Surah Saba, verse number 15. God says, Kulu min rizqi rabbikum washkuru lahu baldatun tayyibah wa rabbun ghafur. God says, eat of what your sustainer has provided for you and render thanks to him, a land most goodly, a land most pure, and a sustainer who is much forgiving. My late uncle was a great humanitarian, and when he passed away quite suddenly, I wanted to do something in his name, and so I decided to draw on these disparate traditions from the Quran, from the ahadith of the Prophet and the Imams, put them into one place, and the entirety of the sales of the book, 100% of the book sales on history of Yemen in the Quran and Hadith, would go to support those who are so tragically downtrodden because of the war in Yemen. So just to give you a flavor of what is mentioned in the book, we also find that across religious traditions, Yemen is mentioned as a historical place of importance. Hadramaut is mentioned in the Bible, in Genesis and in Chronicles. It's mentioned several times across the Quran, notably in chapter number 11, chapter number 40, chapter number 46 as well, and in many other places. Yemen's interaction with the early Muslim society is actually very interesting, very important as to how actually, because of its proximity to, of course, the Arab cultures that share so much in terms of the curiosity, the debate, the religious paraphernalia, the revelation, the poetry, the storytelling that was present in the early Muslim times. And of course, with its fluid movement of interaction with migration and trade and marriage, accessed by Indian Ocean on one side, as well as Northern Arabia on the other side, Yemen is known to be a hub for the ancient languages, although many of them are no longer extant today. But actually classical Arabic, or what we know as Fusha, is indebted to the Yemeni regional dialects. And so there's a mixture of Semitic languages in antiquity and regional Yemeni dialects that actually rooted in the development of Islamic history. Even until now, classical Arabic is specifically studied through the history of the Yemeni tribes and their comparisons between their northern Hijazi and Kufan dialects. As Islam came to be, you actually have many traditions of the Prophet and the early caliphs looking towards Yemen for many of their own apparel. Sometimes it's Yemeni cloaks, sometimes it's actually the types of jewelries that they had. In a famous sermon, the fourth caliph of Islam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, actually talks about the products from Yemen in the most poetic, beautiful manner. And he compares it to the beauty of a peacock. And he says that you would imagine its feathers to be sticks made of silver and wonderful circles and sun-shaped feathers growing to be pure gold and pieces of green emerald. And then he continues in his lines. He says, if you likened the feathers of these peacocks to cloths, they would be the printed apparels or amazing cloths of Yemen. Now, the reason why I bring in the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib is that Ali was actually sent to Yemen to bring it to Islam. And he met its largest tribe, the tribe of Hamdan, and read out a letter from the Prophet Muhammad and answered a number of questions and then led them in prayer. And actually, on that one day, the entirety of the tribe of Hamdan actually converted to Islam. And from then, the rest of the region of Yemen converted to Islam. So there's so much rich literature in the early Islamic texts that actually build a picture of what was occurring in Yemen at that time. And so I decided to write this book, A Pure Land, dedicated towards this topic. And as I said, 100% of the profits of it go to those people who are needy. I thank you for listening to me and give me the time to present the book. If anyone has any questions, they're always capable of reaching me on any of the social media platforms. And I look forward to sharing the book with all of you further and wider than what has been done before. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed, Jaffer Ladakh, and this immediately makes me want to read your work on Yemen, because thanks to all of the speakers we've had so far over the last 15 minutes, we're getting this beautiful historic and social and political view on Yemen. And we understand absolutely that this is going to be a topic which is something which is a specialism for many of our speakers, but not necessarily all of our viewers. So we are trying to balance out the expertise that we have on show We are now going to have a very special guest in John Darlington, who will be showing some slides. John Darlington is an archaeologist and an author who joined the World Monuments Fund in 2015 to lead the British affiliate. Prior to being there, he was a regional director for Northwest England for the National Trust and also served as county archaeologist for Lancashire. On top of that, he has a specialism in medieval towns and landscapes, castles and abbeys. So I am desperate to see with his archaeologist and his historian's eye what he's going to show us in the slides. John Darlington, I'm going to turn off my camera, but I'm here. Over to you.
Bidisha, thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's great to be here this evening. I work for World Monuments Fund, and I'm sure actually many viewers haven't actually heard of World Monuments Fund, but I'm absolutely sure that you will have heard of some of the sites that we've worked on, because these range from the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia all the way through to the Sacred Valley and Machu Picchu in Peru. So a huge range of sites. Part of our DNA is that we own nothing. So we always work with local communities to preserve their irreplaceable heritage, which brings me to the first picture that you can see in front of you, because the project I want to talk about is one in Taiz in Yemen, which has been supported by the UK government through the Cultural Protection Fund. The thing about Taiz, and if you go to the next picture, is that it's at a crossroads. It's in the mountains, but between the mountains and the sea. So it has a very things. There you can see it, the citadel on the mountain. And if we go to the next picture, it'll give you some flavor of the kinds of buildings which this rich heritage that Taiz has left in the region. So souks, there are palaces. Again, the next picture will illustrate that. There you go. So you can see it has a rich archaeological and architectural heritage. Next picture, please, because the issue that we were brought in to help the local community tackle is heritage which is caught in the crossfires of the conflict. And you can see here what that actually looks like. So this is a building. It's a Ottoman period palace in Taiz, which has literally been punched through by holes through shelling between 2015 and 2017. And it doesn't take an archaeologist to tell you that if you can see light through your ceiling, then that building needs help. So next picture, please. We were invited in by the GOAM, so the local government organization, and our project was very much about helping them to restore this palace and also to build up their capacity. So we don't want to just parachute in and then leave. The idea is to leave the skills and the capacity within whatever region we're working in, so that that can continue sustainably into the future. Here is just 5 members of the team that we were involved, and our first piece of work was actually to, because we couldn't travel to Yemen, next picture please, is that we had to bring that team to where our international experts could gather. We did a number of workshops in Cairo, and then next slide please, we did a workshop in Kuwait, or several workshops in Kuwait. And during those workshops, we essentially train that team in the advanced techniques of heritage restoration, of architectural conservation, particularly picking up bits of technical engineering solutions which might not be available immediately in Yemen. They would then take that skill and do things such as mapping. So next picture, please, just shows you an illustration of the damage assessment of the palace. I don't know if you can move to the next slide, but that will illustrate it. There you go. So the extent of damage at the palace. And then finally, they would return back to Taiz in Yemen. Next slide, please. and would work with local craftspeople to actually restore the building, and we'd provide the funding and the expertise to do that. We'd also be on the end of a telephone or a Zoom call so that they would always have connections to international experts who would help guide them and for whom they could ask questions. The final result, and this is my last slide in my quick 5-minute canter, is that we started the restoration in 2018. The exterior of that building was completed in 2019, and they're now currently finishing up the interior work, and it will be restored as a museum, but not any old museum. The idea is to fill it obviously with artifacts celebrating the rich culture of Taiz and Yemen. But what the local community also were very keen to insist upon, and it's something we 100% agree with, is to create a space in which you can program other events to happen. So it's a flexible space where you could celebrate, you can have celebrations, you could listen to poetry, for example. So it's very much not only a backwards looking a museum to celebrate Yemen's heritage, it's also a forward-looking place which can be used by the local community.
Thank you very much indeed, John Darlington. It's the perfect way to lead into the next video that we have, which looks also at architecture, but of a very different, much more earthy and humble kind. We are very blessed to have a video on the Doan Mud Architecture project, and the woman behind this project, Salma Samar Damluju, is with us today. She has to leave at 7, but we do have enough time. So without further ado, let us go into the video on the Doan Mud Architecture project, and then I'll introduce Salma in much greater detail to talk a little bit about it afterwards.
Doan Mud Brick Architecture Foundation was founded in 2007 thanks to the sponsorship of Abdullah Ahmed Saeed Bukshan, who serves as chair of the board of our foundation. He gave me the go-ahead to start this foundation, and it was with the assistance and collaboration of 2 enthusiastic and hardworking colleagues I have in Yemen, Dr. Abdullah Ghmiyan and Ali Basaad, that we put this together, the 3 of us. Over the last 2 years, the Prince Claus Fund and the Cultural Emergency Response received funding from the Cultural Protection Fund and the British Council in order for us to reconstruct some of the most important edifices and landmarks that were destroyed during the war on Yemen between 2015 and 2017, and that is still ongoing. Last year, we managed to restore 4 projects extremely successfully, and the success of these led us to engage in another 4 projects that we have been carrying on and still ongoing.
الحسن من بالصد أغراكي حتى قتلتي بفارق الهجر مغناك يا ربة الحسن من بالصد أغراك حتى قتلتي بفار الهجر مناك قتلتي بفاضل أجل بغضك.
The beauty of the completed, well-built sites and domes celebrates the restitution of this important culture and lends new hope in regenerating the war-torn heritage. Finally, the importance of all of this is not to restore sites that have been destroyed. It's more to drive home the conviction that this architecture is an important architecture for the future.
Thank you so very much for that valuable presentation. I am delighted to say that we have Salma Damluji here with us. We know that you only have 15 minutes. So please, I really just would like you to say a little bit more about the project and what you wish to achieve with it and how important it is for us to focus on building and rebuilding at this time when the cliches around Yemen are so one-sided and there's so much ignorance around history and culture and creativity in the region.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me. And it's very sad that I hear that there's so much ignorance about Yemen and the region, because Yemen is one of the most important landmarks in the entire region of Arabia in terms of civilization. And pre-Islamic history points to Yemen and the construction there of palaces, and so does the Quran. However, this is not the point. The important issue now, in light of the war and the devastated condition of the country, is that we assist in every way possible, not only in resuscitating architecture and the built environment and the urban environment, the destroyed and damaged that brings so much despair into people's everyday lives and reminds them of the destruction, but also to resuscitate the life and hope of the people there and to give them more encouragement and a refreshing signal for initiatives that are being made in the country. And since we finished this small video that you saw, we have completed 4 other projects in Hadramaut and now are looking at setting up an earth lab with the University of Sayoun in Hadramaut in order to create an educational institute for students, architecture students in Yemen and from abroad to come and engage with this discipline of architecture that is unique.
Let me see if I can bring myself up on the screen. Here we go. Thank you so much indeed. We know that you have to get off, but I can see from the chat that's coming in that people are incredibly inspired by your work. To everyone who's with us tonight, they're being extremely diplomatic in keeping their mics off. But let me back announce Salma and let me reiterate this project again. So this was the Dawan Mud Architecture Project, and we have been honored to have the presence and the insight of Salma Samar Damluji, British Iraqi architect, curator, author, and professor at the American University of Beirut. After studying and teaching at the AA and the RCA, Damluji established the RCA Asila studios in Morocco during the 1990s. We've had amazing presentations, and now I want to introduce you to our next participant in the showcase, Amina Atik. She's an artist and poet, a Yemeni Scouse poet, as she presents herself, an award-winning activist and performance artist, a BBC Words First 2019 finalist and Young Associate for Curious Minds. She's currently writing her solo show, Broken Biscuits, exploring her grandmother's 1970s Yemeni British household. And in 2020, she produced a short documentary, Unheard Voices, capturing the stories of Yemeni shopkeepers in Liverpool. 5 minutes only, alas, I hope it feels like a lot longer. Over to you. I will turn my camera off now.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just really inspired to be here. I think I think it's important to start somewhere that's really important right now in my work, which is a conversation I had with my grandmother. And that question is, why did you come to Britain? And I think when the war began in Yemen, I started to reattach myself to that place of home. So I'm going to share just a 1-minute video of a very long interview.
أنت الذي حلفتني وحلفتني لما جيتي هذا البلاد كيف كان الحياة؟ لا بأس كانت أول خوف ليه؟ نتيجة كانوا الخوف في اليمن في البلاد هذا حق الجورة النيبل ايرش وانجليش لا مساكين مش مثل الميموري قصة ذكريات ايوه تذكري انا كان عندي قدين قال لنا الحلبة والعصيد والفري نيس كنا كان نوزي عندي كل شبس انت كنا نشتغل في الدكان. انت اشتغلتي؟ ايش كنتي تسوي؟ نبيع الخبز واللحم ليش ماشي حجاب؟ وين الحجاب؟ ماشي حجابات. ليه؟ كانوا ممنوع. ممنوع؟ مثلا من عدن. ولا عشي حجابات. ترى سرار مع الرجال بعد ايام. ولا شربت جسمي. تفكري ان اليمنيين يبقوا على حقهم الكولتشر حقنا العادة. أيوة العادة.
Yeah, so that is a 1-minute video of my grandmother. So I'm going to share 2 poems to fill up the time, really short poems. And the first one is when my mother danced with my hair, and it explores them early memories living in a terrace council house. Cross-legged on the kitchen floor. Between my mother's thighs, she quenches my hair in her hands, reminiscing the terrace dance and ankle bells and clicking her fingers to the music her tongue crafts. And my mother chokes up a childlike laughter drenched in olive oil, and I felt my neck snap. My mother spreads the excess across my pigmented neck, and we dance together. We dance together with my hair in her hands. I turned my face away. Mum, I don't want to be here. Mum, I don't want to be here. So my thighs thickened on the flinty floor, too tangled to sit up straight for a primary school girl. Didn't mother tell you that she loves you? Perfectly plaiting my hair, she licked her finger, stealing my childhood with her nails creased into my roots. And it locked the ends with an elastic band to keep me away from the foreign winter. Only fair girls seek marriage who keep their face moist. But I'm too young to be smothered in love. We both knew it was never going to last. So my mother tells me to finish my breakfast. So I bit into my half-buttered toast like a dried date. Skimming its skin, I plotted my journey back home with loose change ringing in my skirt pocket. So I promised to walk up the diaspora walls when they come knocking. And when they come knocking, mother found me on the floor, breathing with my hair separated from my body because I told my mother it reminded me too much of the girls back home. So I turned my face away. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Thank you. And then just a little short piece to honor the legacy poet and icon of revolution, Muhammad Mahmoud Az-Zubayri, which I came across at the Arab Arts Festival, and he shaped my work, my vision, everything, and the love to my home, Yemen. He sat in his favorite shade on the main road to the east. His eyes black pearl, diamonds full of tears, a face like revolution. Broke open the shackles passing through a Yemenite blade To reform a callous nation is a prayer in hell, is a bitter tongue, is a home without heart, is not a home. And he meddled his fingers in the sand in a political struggle among the blind Bedouins, tribesmen, and the heartbreakers, mourning to find themselves drinking poetry from a glass. At night, he disappeared, sank in unison in the arms of his assassin, taking the last breath in the final stanza of an open wound inseparable from the land we share, and all is given. He died for love, and he died for Yemen. So I write parallel love letters to the home that my heart aches for. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those wonderful words, those gorgeous poems, and that very funny and very inspiring film clip. I'd like to see the longer version of that if you have it. Amina Atik, everybody. And now it's my chance to introduce a poet and an author, Hamdan Zayed Damag. He will be playing a video. We have it already. Don't worry, Hamdan, if you're waiting on that, we already do have it. And he'll be reciting the same poem again while we show it, because we have this fantastic English-Arabic translation on the screen. So for people who are multilingual but in different areas, don't worry, we have a double translation. He will then discuss the poem. So let me introduce Hamdan Damag, a prize-winning novelist, poet, and researcher. He received his PhD in computer science from Reading in 2005, and since then he's worked as an academic, a researcher, a journalist, a translator, a human rights activist, and a political analyst. He's currently vice president of the Yemeni Center for Research and Studies and a member of the executive committee of both the British-Yemeni Society and Labour Friends of Yemen. So we have a video to show you, and then we have a fabulous dual translation and a discussion of the poem from Hamdan Zayed Damag. I'm going to turn this off and your 5 minutes begins.
لقد شاخ في خلسة من دمعة في الوقت شاخ، وشجرة الكافور التي أمام بيته شاخت، وكذا الفراشات التي لونت أحلامه، ونبض القلب الذي رافق أحزانه، والحروف التي أضاءت له كل المجرات شاخت. وانتصاراته، والشروخ التي رممتها يداه شاخت، والأسرار التي نتجتها المواويل والذكريات، العين التي امتلأت بالنجوم، واليد التي ضربت بماء بياضها حجر الجفاف، كلها شاخت. واستسلمت كلماته للكائنات وللغبار، وتعطبت بواسق أفكاره الباذخات، فلم تعد رئتاه ترسم لليتامى ملاعب عند الزفير، ولم تعد أذناه تسمع همس الجداول أو رقصة العشب الوحيد على التلال. لقد شاخ، تصدع سقف أيامه، واستسلمت جدرانه للسيل، ثم توسد البرق التي كانه، ثم شاخ.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for having me with you in this very interesting event. I will read again the poem that you have just seen. Maybe this is just to give you another chance to have the flavor of how modern Arabic poetry sounds in Arabic. شاخ. في خلسة من دمعة في الوقت شاخ، وشجرة الكافور التي أمام بيته شاخت، وكذا الفراشات التي لونت أحلامه، ونبض القلب الذي رافق أحزانه، والحروف التي أضاءت كل المجرات شاخت. صمت الهزائم، أنين الخرائب، كل انكساراته وانتصاراته، والشروخ التي رممتها يداه شاخت، والأسرار التي نسجتها المواويل والذكريات، العين التي امتلأت بالنجوم، واليد التي ضربت بماء بياضها حجر الجفاف، كلها شاخت، واستسلمت كلماته للكائنات وللغبار، وتعطبت بواسق أفكاره الباذخات، فلم تعد رئته ترسم لليتامى ملاعبا عند الزفير، ولم تعد أذناه تسمع همس الجداول أو رقصة العشب الوحيد على التلال. لقد شاخ، تصدع سقف أيامه، واستسلمت جدرانه للسيل، ثم توسد البرق الذي كانه، ثم شاخ. So this was the poem, and I'm going to speak about how this poem, the story behind this poem, and what is it about. So the story of this poem actually is the story of a conflict. I wrote this poem a long time ago, about 6 years ago, which is almost the age of the current Yemeni conflict. But I didn't publish it then, and I just kept it with me.
So for the next just 5 minutes, we have Sharina Lee Sati. She's an independent spoken word artist and poet from Bradford, and her book titled She was released in 2020. She's a passionate poet who writes about life, the environment, social stigmas, homelessness, poverty and discrimination, but always with hope, insight and positivity. Sharina was selected as a Bradford Community Champion, and she was nominated for the British Indian Awards 2020 in the Media, Arts and Culture category. We're honoured to have you with us. I'm going to turn my microphone and camera off, and the next 5 minutes are just for you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I've got just one poem that I'm going to share, and I'm going to just take my time with it for the 5 minutes that I have. I was invited to create this poem for this evening, and it comes from my own perspective, from an outside perspective. Yeah, from things that I've seen online, from resources I've been learning about Yemen, and also things that are new to me, like honey, and learning about frankincense and coffee. Thanks to Anwar for the insight of learning more about Yemen, which I've been able to research. And this poem is called Yemen. Yemen, a land rich in liquid gold and mountaintop stories that go untold, where stands the tree of paradise, resting upon the desert sand, alongside the mountain rubble stone, the ancient tree, where honeybees collect the purest of nectar. Soft grey branches sway amongst the breeze, as the sidra leaves move in sync to the wind, and the bees swarm as its protector. Hives are scattered on mountain peaks that lie beneath the sky so close to heaven, where honeydew glistens like a galaxy of stars, a golden elixir like the warm embrace of a mother's arms, the gentle extract of every droplet of honey that swirls into glass jars to sail the sea, for us to taste the purest of honey, honey that is derived from the land of Yemen. This earth bears enough treasure to fill every swollen belly and every hungry soul. The fertile land is not greedy, it's the governments that are in control. For the earth provides what should be one's human right, but when it comes to money and power, there will always be a divide. So many innocents suffer and have died and still suffer. Yemen. Yemen grows what we have read in history books, the forgotten treasure that grows within the bark of its trees. When it's carved and the oozing sap is released, where frankincense releases its incense for us to breathe in its exotic aroma, an ancient tree that connects soul to sea and ways of healing our body naturally. Yemen should be a land that's as healthy as its honey. Its people should be thriving, not tapped in severe poverty. Because when you look at the truth, it all boils down to war and money. As a land prospers in liquid gold honey, the people of Yemen are starving and are being starved from the fruits of the soil. Because every fruit bears a price tag. While people die of starvation, others fighting for oil, fighting for land, while starving the hands of its own people. So while we sip our morning coffee and taste the sweetness of Yemen's honey, of its aroma, of its earthly scent, as you fill your bellies and your soul till it's content, remember that honey that you sip and that frankincense you inhale is from a land where conflict strikes and government officials should be in jail for the crimes of starving its own people, for allowing millions to die, from preventable deaths and diseases, from famine, from war. So when Yemen greets our shores in jars of coffee and pots of honey, remember every single Yemeni life that suffers because of war and money. While we fill our stomach and quench our own thirst, share a thought in your heart for others suffering first. Every mother that gives birth, every life on this earth, we should be putting humanity first. The Yemen people should not be dying of hunger nor thirst. Yemen, a land rich in liquid gold and mountaintop stories that goes untold. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that beautiful poem, and also how gorgeously performed and read it was. Everyone, that was Sharina Lee Sati. Thank you so very much indeed. We are coming to a close, but we have two very special things before. We have a music video. It's an introduction to a Yemeni musician performing a typical instrument called the oud. Anyone who's interested in Arabic culture and music will know exactly the instrument that I'm talking about. It's a beautiful instrument with a beautiful sound. Following that music video, we're going to have a few very brief closing words about how we can positively move forward from Councillor Mohammed Khan. Councillor Mohammed Khan is the new Mayor of Milton Keynes for 2021 to 2022 and the first of Bangladeshi heritage. We are honoured to have him here. But before we hear from him, we are going to learn all about the oud.